Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is Six Path Weeb, and I'm glad to have you here. Today, we're diving into part 2 of our fanfic series, What If Naruko Possessed the Mirrorborn Bloodline? As always, a quick disclaimer. The content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in these videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now that that's out of the way, let's jump right into it. Naruko could be found lying quietly on the grass in a peaceful clearing, her goggles set aside as she gazed up at the sky. The night was clear, and the gently fading moon glowed beautifully among the stars that dotted the midnight canvas. The moonlight shimmered softly in her silvery eyes as she lost herself in thought. She felt calm. In this quiet moment, she could show her true self without hiding behind the usual masks she wore during the day. Here, it didn't matter what others thought. Even though she had a training match in a few hours against Sakura and Sasuke, a 2-on-1 session, she had just perfected the Huton technique she'd been working so hard to master. They were curious about what was hidden behind her goggles, but Naruko was more excited about testing her new skills and pushing her limits. Right now, though, she just wanted to give her body some rest. She hoped that when the time came, she'd be able to shift between her different abilities without issue. Although she was reluctant, she gently urged her tired body to sit up and continue training. She had been interested in the water release, water blade technique, though it required focused effort and careful control. With enough practice, she believed it would become a valuable part of her skill set. Meanwhile, Sakura was massaging her sore hands as she rested from her own training. She looked up as she felt cool water being poured gently over them, soothing some of the ache. Sasuke stood beside her, calmly capping the bottle she'd used. "You should take it easy with that technique," she advised with a calm tone. "Overdoing it will only make things harder on your hands." She sat down beside Sakura, having just completed her own exercises with the fire release, dragon flame technique. Sakura had also been practicing a fire-style move, but her chakra reserves were still developing, so they were keeping things manageable. "Do you think we'll win?" Sakura asked suddenly, a note of uncertainty in her voice. Sasuke gave her a small, confident smile. "Unless Naruko surprises us with something totally unexpected, we should have a solid chance." "Yeah, but what if she really does have a new special ability?" Sasuke shrugged thoughtfully. "Then we'll adapt. It's hard to say what it could be though." Both teammates fell into thoughtful silence, considering the possibilities. Naruko clearly had something unique, but what it was remained a mystery. There were too many potential answers, and they had given up trying to figure it out hours ago. "All right, let's get back to it," Sasuke said as she rose to her feet. "This time, release the fire properly. Don't hold it in too long or you'll risk strain." Sakura nodded and quickly stood up. The two of them resumed a basic training stance, working through their routines in preparation for the match with Naruko. Elsewhere, Kakashi sat quietly on the rooftop of a house, watching the sky as the first signs of dawn began to appear. For once, his usual reading material was absent, replaced by deeper thoughts. There was too much on his mind to truly relax. He had spent much of the night reflecting on the Kyukagen, a rare and fascinating ability that could rival the best of the known limit releases. It was a unique trait that many would be eager to understand and connect to, perhaps even through strategic alliances arranged by the village's clans. Kakashi suspected that someone from the Yamanaka clan might take an interest, especially since they had someone around Naruko's age. He wasn't sure about the Hyuga, but it wouldn't be surprising if the elders discussed possibilities quietly. Other clans might consider it too, though perhaps not as strongly. As for the Kyukagen itself, its core powers were already remarkable, including the ability to sense others with special abilities and to mimic certain techniques. However, there were limits to its strength. Naruko had to train specifically with each new technique, and she could only access one at a time. Switching between them too often in a short period could cause problems, and her clones couldn't use the ability, which limited its utility in certain situations. These challenges helped balance its great potential. Then there was Naruko's attitude toward her powers. While others might see their abilities as a means to prove something or gain status, Naruko treated hers as a gift to be used responsibly. She even asked for permission before learning certain techniques, showing great consideration. That alone revealed much about her values. As the sky brightened with the colors of sunrise, Kakashi sighed and stood up. The match was drawing near, and he wanted to ensure it remained safe and constructive for everyone involved. With that final thought, he stepped off the roof and headed into the house to make some coffee. Sakura and Sasuke strolled toward the house just before 8 o'clock, planning to get some breakfast. They both knew they'd need energy before sparring with their determined blonde teammate, otherwise, it might end up as chaotic as the bell test had been. Sakura, the green-eyed kunoichi, had recently mastered the fire technique Sasuke had taught her. It was a fundamental jutsu, but given her modest chakra reserves, it was the most practical option. She wasn't quite the powerhouse that Naruko was, and she knew she couldn't pull off half the techniques Sasuke could, but she had found a way to make it work. They were greeted by their sensei as they entered. "Ah, I see you two decided to come in for breakfast. Have you seen Naruko yet?" Sasuke asked as she sat down at the table, with Sakura quickly joining her. Kakashi nodded. Yes, she stopped by about an hour ago to eat but headed back to her favorite clearing for more training. Sasuke began eating without delay. Both she and Sakura were still a bit groggy from the combination of intense training and little rest. They agreed to take it easy before heading to the clearing where their friendly sparring match would take place. At the other end of the table, Inari watched them silently, clearly not thrilled but saying nothing. He couldn't interfere with the upcoming match, doing so would upset his surrogate big sister. Still, he was curious and excited to watch Naruko go all out in a practice battle. "Well then, I suppose it's time I actually did something sensei-like and offered some advice," Kakashi said, setting down his empty plate. That immediately got both kunoichi's attention. What else was there to learn about Naruko? She mostly relied on shadow clones and close-range combat. Sure, she could be clever and spontaneous under pressure, but only when she stayed calm and focused. "I know it may seem sudden," Kakashi continued, "but you should know that Naruko's been getting stronger, especially after her encounter with the false hunter Nin. My advice? Don't underestimate her. That's the easiest way to lose an edge." Sasuke frowned slightly. "She's stronger? How?" "Lots of training," Kakashi replied thoughtfully. "I think she may have picked up another technique, though I'm not entirely sure. But again, the takeaway here is, don't let your guard down. That alone can change the course of a match." "It shouldn't be a problem," Sasuke said with confidence. "I have my Sharingan, and Sakura's learned a new fire technique." Kakashi sighed and gave a slight shake of his head. The Sharingan is a useful tool, no doubt. But relying on it too much, or letting confidence cloud your judgment, can backfire. Naruko figured this out rather quickly, Kakashi thought silently. She understood the value of humility through experience. Sasuke still had that to learn, perhaps. "Well, that's my input. I'm going to go check on Naruko and share some thoughts with her too." "Wait," Sakura said, "why are you helping both sides?" "Because you're all my students," Kakashi replied after a moment. "You each deserve the same chance to grow. Now, make sure you relax before the match. You'll wear yourselves out if you don't." Both kunoichi nodded, and after finishing breakfast, headed off to rest. Naruko sat quietly in the clearing, legs crossed as she looked out at a small pond, clearly deep in thought. She had been working hard for hours trying to master a technique known as water release, water guillotine. It was no easy task. The technique demanded extremely precise chakra control to sharpen the water's edge effectively. Without that, it would simply splash an opponent, offering no real advantage. It was said that with proper mastery, it could even cut through a metal kunai. But Naruko was still struggling with that level of refinement. Despite the challenge, she had kept at it through the night, determined to improve. She had the foundations down, but sharpening the technique to its full potential was proving to be the real challenge. "You look like you've had a busy night," Kakashi said as he stepped into the clearing. Naruko looked up and offered a tired smile, which quickly turned into a look of frustration as she glanced back at the pond. "I've been trying to master this water technique, but I just can't get the edges sharp enough," she admitted. "Which technique?" Kakashi asked, taking a seat beside her. "Maybe I can help." "It's called water release, water guillotine. Haku created it, but I just can't seem to control it well enough." "Sounds like a solid move," Kakashi replied. "I haven't heard much about it." "That's probably because Haku came up with it. It's a B-rank technique." Kakashi let out a low whistle. "Well, that would explain it. A technique like that would need excellent chakra control. I bet the water walking exercise would help prepare you. But learning it fully in a few hours might be asking too much." Naruko sighed but nodded. It felt just out of reach, but she was determined to master it eventually. "So," Kakashi asked gently, "what's your plan for the match?" Naruko paused, thinking. She'd been so focused on training that she hadn't really formed a strategy. But she did know one thing. "I don't want to use the Sharingan," she said quietly. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. "Why not? You've copied it, it's a tool, just like anything else. Yeah, but it's Sasuke's specialty. I want to fight in my own way, Naruko explained. So, I'm guessing you'll use your ice release and that special chakra form you've been working on? I'm definitely using ice release, Naruko confirmed. But I'm still figuring out the Byaku chakra. I don't really know how to control it yet. She turned to her teacher with hopeful eyes. Would you teach me? Kakashi smiled behind his mask. That was what he admired most about Naruko, her willingness to learn and grow. She soaked up knowledge like a sponge and always sought to push herself. Of course, he said as he stood. But you'll need to learn a few basics first. Don't use your limit right away, you only get one switch per fight, and we don't want to waste that opportunity. No problem, Naruko said, standing up with a bright, eager grin. What are we starting with? Well, Kakashi explained, I don't use Byaku chakra often because it interferes with my Sharingan. But for you, it might be perfect, especially because of your naturally strong chakra reserves. I figured as much, Naruko said. But what exactly do I need to do? Byaku chakra is designed for close-range combat. You saturate the surrounding air with it. This not only enhances your hand-to-hand skills, but it also allows you to sense movements in the area, even without looking. He walked over to a tree and removed his hands from his pockets. Naruko immediately felt a shift in the air as chakra flooded the space around him. Her eyes widened as Kakashi threw a gentle punch toward the tree, but stopped an inch short. A moment later, the tree's side splintered, leaving a wide hole in its trunk. How did you? Naruko exclaimed, amazed. Kakashi chuckled. It's all about control. And soon, you'll learn to do the same. Chakra displacement, Kakashi explained, answering the half-asked question. I concentrated the chakra I had dispersed into the air and focused it into my fist. When I released it quickly, the energy forced the tree to crack. Naruko's eyes widened in surprise as she watched her teacher step back about 10 feet. With another punch into the air, she saw a ripple of force strike the tree again. This time, it only loosened some bark, but it was still a demonstration worth noting. As you can see, Kakashi continued, slipping his hands back into his pockets. At that moment, his body became like a soft vacuum, gently drawing in the dispersed chakra. I can send energy-based strikes through the air for short distances. However, the closer the target is, the stronger the impact. When can I learn that? Naruko asked eagerly, her grin nearly reaching her ears. I'm afraid you'll have to wait a while, Kakashi replied gently. Naruko's excited expression shifted to one of mild frustration. Byaku chakra is far more concentrated than normal chakra and is very tricky to control. If you were to use it now, it might even triple your chakra capacity. I'd teach it to you immediately if you were ready, but it takes precision similar to the Hyuga clan's techniques. Then why show me all that awesome stuff if I can't try it yet? Naruko said, scratching the back of her head. I wanted you to see what's possible. Also, I want you to practice chakra saturation like I demonstrated. Just keep releasing it gently into the air. It can even interfere with certain visual techniques like the Sharingan, which can be useful. Understand? Naruko nodded rapidly, absorbing every word. Watching the Byaku chakra in action had been incredible. She couldn't wait to try using it in a friendly match against her rival. Well, now that I've given you your clue, just like I did with your teammates, I'm off to relax a bit. Good luck with your water jutsu. Naruko watched her teacher exit the clearing, nose already back in his little orange book. With a determined nod, she turned back to her training, still working on refining her water curtain technique. 12 o'clock finally arrived, and Sasuke and Sakura stepped into the training clearing where they had agreed to meet. They found Naruko already there, sitting on a rock with her legs crossed, her bright grin beaming with confidence. You still ready for this challenge? Sasuke asked, smirking in his usual way. Naruko's expression turned serious, her focus intense, like during a sparring match. I wouldn't back down for anything. She called out from across the field. Their teacher, Kakashi, arrived in a soft puff of smoke. Oddly, he wasn't holding his usual book. Today was important. The Sharingan was going up against the Kyukagen, a rare ability said to copy other unique traits. He needed to pay close attention. Naruko leapt down from the rock as Kakashi spoke from across the field. All right, I want a respectful, clean match. You may use techniques and strategy, but be careful not to cause harm. If I feel it's getting too intense, I will pause the match. This is a 2-on-1, Naruko against Sasuke and Sakura. Ready? Naruko gave a quick nod, then surged her chakra to activate her Kyukagen. She didn't yet know which element she would tap into first, but she was determined to give it her best, especially with one of her teammates being someone she admired deeply. Sasuke activated his eye technique, while Sakura readied a kunai. They had prepared a loose strategy, but a lot depended on timing. "Begin," Kakashi called. Naruko moved first, leaping back and quickly forming a hand seal. A second later, 10 shadow clones popped into view and charged at Sasuke and Sakura. Sasuke calmly tracked them using his eye ability, readying his counterattack while Sakura started swiping at them with her blade. In under a minute, the clones were gone, but that was long enough for Naruko to decide on her next move. She felt a shift in her vision, subtle, but clear to her. She activated one of the special chakra traits and performed another hand seal, forming a new wave of clones. Sakura finished her hand signs first. Fire style, Ember Shot. Sasuke followed quickly. Fire style, Phoenix Flame. The duo unleashed a combination of small and large fireballs, easily taking down the wave of clones. Naruko, however, wasn't finished yet. With a deep breath, Naruko announced, Ice style, Frostbite. A chilling breeze burst from her mouth, coating parts of the field with a soft, shimmering frost. The fire techniques fizzled out as the cold neutralized them. Sasuke and Sakura stepped back, more cautious now. Sakura suddenly winced. "My arm. I can't move it." Sasuke turned toward her in concern. A light coating of frost had reached her arm and caused it to go stiff. She wasn't hurt, but the cold had numbed her movement. Naruko followed up with another icy gust, prompting the two to dodge. Sakura, with her one good arm, began tossing kunai, aiming to give Sasuke a chance to regroup. Naruko blocked most of them, but a few got through, grazing her slightly. Fire style, Great Fireball. Naruko responded just as fast. Ice style, Frostbite. The two elemental attacks clashed mid-air, fire and frost struggling for dominance. While the two forces pushed against each other, Sakura tried to surprise Naruko from behind with a flurry of throwing stars. A few of them hit their mark, interrupting Naruko's concentration. She quickly leapt away, using a clone to lift her into the air and escape the burst of fire that followed. Meanwhile, Sasuke smirked to himself. He could feel his visual technique getting stronger. As Naruko landed, she created more clones while preparing another wave of strategy. Sasuke and Sakura tried to keep up, launching more projectiles and small, controlled explosions to disrupt the clones. Naruko countered with another frost wind, one that made Sasuke's foot lose feeling for a moment, causing him to trip. Sakura helped him up and started throwing fireballs again to give him time to recover. Naruko formed a clone that launched her upward once again. In the air, she made hand seals and created aerial clones that dove toward her teammates. Sasuke unleashed another barrage of flames to stop most of them, but a few slipped through and engaged him in hand-to-hand practice. He managed to keep up with them, even as Naruko landed a couple of solid strikes. He turned to help Sakura as she was knocked off balance by one of the aerial clones. He threw kunai attached to chakra strings, guiding them to hit several of the clones and even tag the real Naruko once. Seeing an opening, he sent out another great fireball, but Naruko countered again with her frost technique. Suddenly, the clash ended. Sakura had reached Naruko and managed to graze her hand with her kunai. Though the cut was shallow, a few drops of fluid reached Sakura's eyes, causing her to cry out and cover them. "Pause the match," Kakashi called, rushing over. Sasuke stopped, reluctantly, while Naruko looked worriedly at her teammate. The small injury on her hand was already healing, thanks to the protective chakra of the tailed beast inside her. Kakashi helped Sakura rinse her eyes with water from his pouch. Her eyes were red but would be fine. As she sat down beside him on a nearby rock, she continued rubbing her eyes carefully. "Sakura can't continue for now," Kakashi said gently. "Naruko and Sasuke, please resume when ready." They nodded, now facing each other directly. Sasuke moved first, rushing in as Naruko created more clones. The two began a carefully choreographed exchange of techniques, fire clashing with frost, strategy against strategy, all while maintaining control and care not to cause any harm. When Sasuke finally managed to use wire-bound kunai to trap Naruko against a tree, she smiled calmly, because she wasn't done yet. As he began his next technique, Naruko shifted her chakra once more, eyes gleaming as she prepared to unleash her next strategy. Just as the fire traveled halfway down the wires, the blonde girl launched her counterattack. Naruko focused her energy, channeling pure, white chakra into the wires, surging it towards Sasuke at the other end. Sasuke's eyes widened in disbelief as the white chakra surged through the flames and reached him. With a jolt of surprise, he was pushed backward, which loosened the binds that had been restraining Naruko. Seizing the moment, Naruko quickly grabbed a shuriken and began charging it with her unique Byaku chakra, causing it to emit a brilliant white glow. Sasuke stood, watching closely as Naruko released the glowing weapon. It didn't make the usual sharp whistling sound of a normal shuriken, this one buzzed with intensity, like an energized tool on overdrive. Startled, Sasuke pulled out a kunai to block the oncoming attack, but the empowered shuriken pressed fiercely against his weapon, forcing her to take several steps back. When it finally came to a halt, his kunai was visibly marked by the clash, and the air around it shimmered from the heat of friction. Sasuke barely had time to react before 10 more glowing shuriken soared toward her. Naruko, encouraged by her success, now decided to use a kunai instead. Unlike her teacher Kakashi's method of coating weapons, she infused the chakra directly into the blade. Sasuke turned to see her move just in time, and with the aid of her Sharingan, managed to spot the weapon narrowly missing her face. The kunai embedded itself into a tree, which cracked and splintered dramatically from the impact, scattering wood chips everywhere. Impressed by the result, Naruko drew the rest of her kunai and prepared to continue. Sasuke recovered just in time to leap into the air, dodging 9 more chakra-charged blades, each trailing white light like miniature comets. Wherever they landed, small craters formed, revealing just how much force was behind them. From above, Sasuke began forming hand signs, preparing her signature technique, Fire Release, Grand Fireball. Naruko immediately recognized the technique and knew it was time for one final move. She focused, pouring every bit of her remaining chakra into her last weapon, determined to replicate her earlier success and match the power of Sasuke's fire technique. Kakashi, observing the escalating match, grew concerned. Realizing things were reaching a critical point, she moved quickly, forming her own hand signs in a blur. Before the two rivals could release their final attacks, a sudden gust of wind surged through the clearing, sweeping them both off balance and sending them tumbling into the trees. Their concentration broke, and the chakra they'd gathered dissipated harmlessly into the air. Just as they tried to gather their bearings, Kakashi's voice echoed calmly through the area, "This match is a draw." "What? I was just about to win." Naruko protested, clearly flustered. Sasuke remained quiet, though her expression made it clear she wasn't thrilled either. Kakashi looked at both of them, her expression serious. "I told you both to keep things under control," she said, her tone firm. "What you were about to do could have ended very badly. That's why I had to step in." Sasuke clenched her jaw, frustrated. The match had been so close. Just one more second, and she believed victory would have been hers. Naruko, on the other hand, realized how far things had gone. Her head lowered as she took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, Sensei," Naruko said softly as she stood up. "It's okay," Kakashi replied with a gentler tone. "Just make sure you don't lose control like that again." The walk back was quiet. Sakura occasionally groaned and rubbed her eyes, clearly annoyed by something. Sasuke, meanwhile, couldn't stop thinking about the fight. She remembered how Naruko's kunai glowed and how much chakra had gone into it. Would Naruko have won if she had thrown it? The white energy had already sliced through her earlier fire technique. That thought unsettled her. She frowned. If Naruko had finished her last attack, the outcome might have been very different. And then there was that unique chakra form Naruko used, something unfamiliar that Sasuke couldn't mimic, even with her Sharingan. It had to be a special ability. Something rare. That realization hit hard. Naruko had her own secret technique, and it wasn't something Sasuke could easily copy. For the first time, Sasuke truly acknowledged Naruko as a rival, not as a joke or passing challenge, but as a worthy equal. She would need to grow stronger, or else she might fall behind. A cough broke her train of thought. She turned and noticed Sakura was starting to look unwell. Her eyes looked tired, her cheeks a bit flushed, classic signs of an oncoming fever. "Hey, Sakura, are you okay? You're looking kind of sick," Sasuke asked, trying to sound casual. "I'm all right," Sakura replied, though her voice sounded strained. "Just a bad headache. My eyes are really sore." Even Kakashi looked concerned. No one could figure out what was affecting her so suddenly. "Sorry if I got anything in your eyes during the match," Naruko said quietly, looking genuinely upset. Soon, the group caught sight of their home, and a wave of relief washed over them. After such an intense day, they were more than ready for some much-needed rest. Sasuke and Naruko both awoke to the unexpected splash of water, courtesy of a basic water-style technique. The blonde girl of the group let out an exaggerated groan as she began wringing out her clothes. Sasuke gave a quick glance in her direction and, sure enough, Naruko had once again fallen asleep with her goggles still on. They turned to see who the culprit was, half expecting it to be Sakura, but to their surprise, a tired-looking Kakashi stood before them, his one visible eye showing just a hint of amusement. "Breakfast," he said simply, before heading back down toward the dining area. The two quickly got dressed and hurried downstairs, only to be puzzled by the absence of their pink-haired teammate. "Where's Sakura?" asked Sasuke as she took her seat. Kakashi sighed, setting down an empty coffee cup and taking a moment to collect his thoughts. Tsunami, who had just entered the room carrying food, looked concerned and paused beside the table. "I won't sugarcoat it," Kakashi said quietly. "She's come down with something serious. Last night, Tsunami and I stayed by her side after she suddenly started feeling very unwell. She's got a high fever, and her eyes are extremely irritated. There are other symptoms, but those are the most concerning right now." "Then what should we do?" Naruko asked, her voice full of worry. "Kazuna, when do you expect the bridge to be completed?" Kakashi asked, turning toward the builder. The older man rubbed his chin and thought. "Probably in about a week." Kakashi gave a solemn nod. "Then I'm afraid we'll need to end the mission early. Sakura needs professional medical care as soon as possible. We'll start packing immediately." "Wait, what?" exclaimed Inari from across the table. "But..." "I'm sorry," Kakashi said firmly but gently. "We have to make sure Sakura gets the help she needs. Naruko, Sasuke, please start packing once you finish eating." Both nodded and quickly began to eat their breakfast, wanting to waste no time. Inari sat quietly, looking saddened by the sudden turn of events. Naruko had grown close to him over their time together, like an older sister figure, and the young boy was clearly upset to see her leave. 2 hours later, Kakashi stood with Sakura carefully resting on his back while Sasuke and Naruko stood nearby with their gear ready. Kakashi thought for a moment he saw Sasuke glance toward Sakura with concern, something that would usually be hidden behind her calm expression. "This is farewell, I suppose," said Tazuna, sadness in his eyes. "I truly don't know how to thank you all. I did arrange for someone at the docks to give you a safe ride home, at least." "We appreciate it," said Kakashi. Naruko turned toward Inari, who had tears in his eyes. He had become like a younger sibling to her, and it was hard to see him so upset. "It's okay to cry," Naruko said gently. "But if you cry too much, you'll make me cry too." Sasuke kept her gaze on Sakura, who was breathing shallowly and trembling slightly, her cheeks warm with fever. Time was short. "Can we please get moving?" Sasuke said, urgency in her voice. With heartfelt goodbyes from Tsunami, Tazuna, and Inari, Team 7 began their journey back to Konoha. "I know what to call the bridge," Inari suddenly shouted, catching everyone's attention. "Let's name it the Great Naruko Bridge." Tazuna paused, then smiled warmly. While he had originally planned to name it after himself, he realized that Naruko had brought hope and courage back to the people of the village. "All right," he said. "That's a wonderful name. The Great Naruko Bridge it is." As their boat sped away, Kakashi turned to his students. "Once we're back on land, we'll move quickly. We need to get to Konoha before nightfall. Sakura's condition is serious, and she needs help." Sasuke and Naruko nodded, taking in the gravity of the situation. Their boat cut across the water swiftly, cool spray hitting their faces and refreshing them despite the tension. Now that the area was safe, they could travel more freely. Sakura lay resting in the middle of the boat, her head propped up gently on her pack. Sasuke sat quietly beside her the entire ride. Naruko noticed, but said nothing. Now wasn't the time to tease or question anyone's behavior. When they reached the dock, Kakashi didn't waste a moment. He carefully picked up Sakura and darted forward, leaving the others to follow. Even the boat operator whistled in amazement at their speed. The run back was mostly silent. Naruko and Sasuke were focused on keeping up with their sensei. There wasn't time for small talk or distractions. As the sky darkened, they finally spotted the familiar wooden gates of Konoha ahead. For the guards on duty, the arrival of Team 7 was a welcome change from the dull routine. "Open up," Kakashi said urgently. "One of my students is in serious condition. We need to get her to the hospital immediately." The guards quickly opened the gates, letting them through. Before Naruko and Sasuke could split off, Kakashi stopped them. "Meet me at the usual place tomorrow," he instructed. "And Naruko, you and I will be seeing the third Hokage later for a private conversation." Naruko nodded, though curiosity stirred within her. Sasuke also raised an eyebrow, wondering what was so important that it required a special meeting with the Hokage. She suspected it had something to do with Naruko's unique abilities. "See you later, sensei. Let us know how Sakura's doing," Naruko called cheerfully as she dashed off toward her favorite ramen stand. With that, the team parted ways, Kakashi to the hospital, Sasuke to train, and Naruko to satisfy her long-missed craving for noodles. Naruko practically danced through the streets. She knew the path to Ichiraku's better than anyone. There was even a shortcut through the old sewer system, which she once used to escape a prank gone too far. Good memories. Just as she reached the stand, something inside her shifted. Her Kyukagen ability stirred, alerting her that someone nearby possessed a unique energy. A new bloodline limit. She paused, looking around carefully. The signature was close. Very close. And then, she saw him. Sitting at the counter was none other than Umino Iruka, her beloved mentor and friend, enjoying a bowl of ramen. His familiar pineapple-style hair was unmistakable. "Hey, Naruko. Welcome back," Iruka said warmly, turning toward her. Naruko stared at him, overwhelmed by joy, nostalgia, and the surprise of seeing him here. The combination was too much. Iruka watched in confusion as Naruko's eyes widened behind her goggles, then, suddenly, she fainted, falling backwards in a dramatic swoon. Hokage Tower, Hokage's office. Sarutobi sat behind his desk, eyes wide with surprise, as he listened to the masked jounin before him. It was the kind of shock one might have if someone had told him that his favorite book series had suddenly gone out of print. A faint trail of smoke drifted from the pipe he momentarily held aside, a sure sign of his mounting tension as he processed Kakashi's story. Naruko Uzumaki, the most unpredictable shinobi in the entire village, had managed to awaken something extraordinary, a rare and powerful Kekkei Genkai known as the Kyukagen. With it came an overwhelming range of abilities that could potentially reshape the balance among nations. The ability to mirror other bloodline traits was simply beyond belief. If knowledge of this reached the world, entire nations might go to great lengths to learn more, or worse. "Kakashi, do you realize the magnitude of this?" the elderly Hokage asked, his voice low and deliberate. "I have a general idea," Kakashi responded, nodding thoughtfully. "This places Naruko far beyond even Sasuke in potential," Sarutobi continued, voice growing serious. "We must not share this with the council. The Kyukagen's value is far too great to risk unnecessary exposure." Kakashi nodded in agreement. That makes sense. If word got out, certain clans might make efforts to arrange alliances or put pressure on her. Inoiki might be the first to try and secure such a connection. Exactly. And not just our own council, foreign leaders might try to use diplomacy or even subterfuge to gain access to the Kyukagen. I'm grateful you kept this hidden, and I commend Naruko for thinking ahead by wearing those goggles to mask the activation of the ability. Kakashi let out a light chuckle. She's a lot sharper than I gave her credit for. Her tactical choices during the training match with Sakura and Sasuke were quite clever. Truth be told, she would have won if I hadn't intervened. But I had to consider the safety of all my students. The Hokage leaned back in his chair, lost in thought. The Kyukagen was more than just a unique ocular trait, it could possibly rival, or even surpass, some of the most powerful Kekkei Genkai known. "Kakashi," Sarutobi said suddenly, catching the Jounin's attention. "The Kyukagen isn't merely a dujutsu." Kakashi blinked. "Wait, how is that possible?" "The ocular manifestation is just one part of a much greater whole," the Hokage explained. "We're dealing with a transcendent bloodline limit, similar to the fabled six-way eyes, the Rinnegan. These limits combine ocular abilities with elemental control and physical transformation." Kakashi frowned, trying to wrap his head around it. "But that would mean?" "Exactly. Naruko's chakra is naturally neutral and shifts depending on the bloodline she's accessed. She can adapt to multiple elemental natures, manipulate her body accordingly, and activate unique eye traits as a catalyst. All three traits, chakra adaptation, anatomical alteration, and ocular abilities, confirm the Kyukagen as a transcendent limit." Kakashi leaned back, exhaling slowly. This is a lot to process. Naruko's limit really is something the world has never seen. Sarutobi nodded grimly. "Which means it's our responsibility to protect her. Until we can speak to her directly, no one must know about this. Not a word." Kakashi gave a serious nod before departing silently. Konoha Hospital, late afternoon. A nurse stood by a hospital bed, glancing repeatedly between a lab report in her hands and the peacefully resting pink-haired girl beside her. "Is she all right?" asked a gentle voice behind her. Startled, the nurse nearly dropped the clipboard before turning to see the masked figure of Jounin Kakashi. His visible eye reflected a mixture of concern and curiosity. "She's going to be just fine," the nurse assured him. "We stabilized her, and she's resting peacefully. Her symptoms resembled a strong allergic reaction, but..." Her voice trailed off, trying to find the right words. "But what?" asked Kakashi gently, though there was a serious edge to his tone. "We ran some tests," she began carefully, handing him a printout. "The first sequence is her original DNA, completely normal. The second one, however, suggests the presence of a newly developed Kekkei Genkai." Kakashi's brow rose in surprise. "But Sakura comes from a civilian family, doesn't she?" "Exactly," the nurse said. "Which is why this makes no sense. What's more, there's a third sequence. Foreign DNA. We believe it triggered the reaction. And possibly altered her chakra network." Kakashi was silent for a moment, mind racing. Then it hit him. "It must have happened during the training session," he murmured. "She came into contact with Naruko's blood when she got cut. Could that be it?" "We can't confirm that, but it's a possibility," the nurse replied, placing a hand on her chin. "What's even more fascinating is that her chakra has now developed 2 natural elemental types. That suggests an elemental-based bloodline trait." Kakashi stared at his student, now fast asleep. What had started as a standard training match was now shaping into something far more complex. "Listen carefully," he said in a quiet but firm voice. "I'm going to speak with the Hokage. Until I return, you are not to leave this room or discuss this with anyone. Understood?" The nurse nodded quickly, understanding the importance of what she had just become part of. As Kakashi disappeared in a blur, she sat down beside Sakura's bed, thoughts swirling with uncertainty. Something remarkable was happening, and it all seemed to center around Naruko Uzumaki. "Make sure that when you find her, you tell her we're opening a new bathhouse and we're naming it after her in her honor," the Hokage said with a gentle smile. "She should be here for the grand opening. Don't forget. And please, try not to drag her back, convincing her kindly will be much more effective." The squad of Hunter Nin exchanged glances. Most of them chuckled softly, but the only female among them clearly wasn't amused. She crossed her arms with a tense expression, her disapproval evident. Sarutobi would have given them another excuse for the mission, but he knew that unless something particularly enticing was involved, like an inspiring visit or a surprise celebration, Jiraiya wasn't likely to return without some hesitation. Just as the Hokage was preparing to dismiss the group, the door swung open abruptly, revealing Kakashi. He appeared winded, as if he had sprinted the whole way. "You're dismissed. Don't return unless you've found her," Kakashi said, addressing the Hunter Nin squad. As they exited, Kakashi turned urgently to the Hokage. "Hokage-sama, please come with me. There's something important you need to see." "What is it?" Sarutobi asked, standing slowly. "It might have to do with the Kyukagen," Kakashi replied. "If it does, we might be facing a significant challenge." Hearing the word Kyukagen made the Hokage instantly alert. He followed Kakashi straight to the hospital. At the hospital, a nurse named Hikari had just been organizing charts when the door opened. Her eyes widened as she recognized the Sandaime Hokage. "May I ask your name?" he said politely. "It's Hikari, sir," she replied nervously. "Could you hand me the blood sample sheet you showed to Kakashi earlier?" Kakashi entered behind him, closing the door softly. The nurse quickly handed over the paper, and Sarutobi scanned it carefully. When he looked up, his expression was serious. "What you've seen today is now classified as an S-rank secret," he stated. "Please treat Sakura as a normal patient and dispose of all her test samples and related data for now." "Is it really that serious?" she asked quietly. "You have no idea," he said, and she rushed off to comply, wide-eyed and flustered. Sarutobi turned to Kakashi. "It looks like our earlier conversation will have to continue back in my office." Meanwhile, Sasuke was walking home after training. For one of the few times in her life, she felt the motivation to push herself harder. Her teammate, Naruko, had somehow become both her rival and her inspiration. The idea of being outpaced by the energetic blonde was simply unacceptable. As she walked, Sasuke's thoughts wandered to Sakura. She had seen something different in her during training, something stronger and more determined. Maybe if she had noticed it earlier, things would have been different. She paused outside the Yamanaka flower shop, deciding on a whim to do something kind. Stepping inside, she spotted the platinum blonde girl behind the counter. Sasuke-chan. What brings you here? Ino asked brightly. I need flowers delivered to the hospital, Sasuke replied calmly, ignoring Ino's hopeful expression. Ino's smile faltered slightly, but she regained her composure. Sure. What kind of arrangement would you like? Sasuke handed over some money. What can I get for this? Something quite nice, Ino responded, a bit curious. Who's it for? Just deliver it to this name, she said, scribbling Sakura's name on a card and handing it over before making a swift exit. Ino looked at the name and blinked in surprise. Dash. Naruko slowly opened her eyes and realized she wasn't in her own room. Looking around, she saw she was on Iruka's couch. Finally awake, Iruka said with a kind tone as he walked into the room. What happened, Naruko? You fainted. Naruko raised a shaky hand, still in disbelief. You have a bloodline trait, she exclaimed, eyes wide. Iruka blinked. What makes you think that? Don't try to hide it. I can sense it. Iruka chuckled softly. Naruko, I promise you, I don't have one. I'll bet 10 bowls of ramen that you do. All right, he smiled, prove it. Naruko hesitated, then asked, can you keep a secret? Of course. With a confident grin, she removed her goggles to reveal mirror-like eyes. Iruka's jaw dropped. Is that? Yep, she said proudly. I call it the Kyukagen. What does it do? I can sense other people with special traits, and even copy them by looking at them. That's how I knew you have one. Iruka was stunned, but soon smiled again. You're really something, Naruko. So why'd you deny it earlier? Iruka sighed. There's a lot people don't know about me. I do have a bloodline trait. And even though I'm officially a Chunin, I'm considered S-class in ability. Naruko's mouth fell open. What? You could have handled that situation with Mizuki easily. Why didn't you? Iruka smiled kindly. Because I trusted you. I believed in you that night. You told me you learned something from the Forbidden Scroll, and I wanted to see what you could do. Naruko was quiet, moved by the trust her teacher had shown her. If you're that skilled, why do you teach? She asked, still confused. Because I love it, Iruka answered warmly. I've been on tough missions, but nothing beats helping students grow. It's peaceful. Mostly, except when you and Konohamaru are around. Naruko chuckled, slightly embarrassed. So, what's your ability called? Hyakurai, 1000 Thunderclaps, Iruka said. It lets me manipulate my body's electricity, even conduct lightning safely. That's how I always caught your pranks. Naruko gasped. That explains so much. And I can sense people through their unique electric signatures. That's how I tracked you all those times. Naruko gave an exaggerated pout. That's so unfair. Iruka laughed. Well, I let you get away now and then. I just didn't want to chase you into the sewers. Ugh. Seriously? Now, the most powerful part. Iruka held his fingers near an outlet. The lights flickered. Then he brought his fingers together and a small arc of electricity danced between them. Naruko's eyes widened. That's real lightning? Yes. It's different from chakra-based lightning. I'll explain more tomorrow. You need rest, and we don't want to cause a blackout in the village. Naruko pouted again but headed home. Fine. But I'm definitely copying it tomorrow. Iruka smiled, watching her go. Good night, Naruko. Sarutobi sat behind his desk, thoughtfully stroking his beard. Across from him, Kakashi remained silent, patiently waiting for his superior to speak. To begin with, the elder finally said, it appears we have discovered a new limit. However, the manner in which Sakura developed this ability is what truly concerns me. I suspect it has something to do with the Kyukagen, Kakashi replied, sharing his theory. You saw the test results, and if you recall my report from the mission, Sakura came into contact with Naruko's chakra. Sarutobi paused for a moment, deep in thought. A possibility came to mind, and if his theory was correct, then Naruko's abilities were even more significant than previously believed. I believe we may be looking at something that mirrors the importance of the Rinnegan, the third Hokage said. Kakashi tilted his head slightly, intrigued. What we're observing may very well be the origin of all bloodline limits. Just as the Rinnegan brought about the art of ninjutsu, this could be the source that gave rise to inherited abilities. That means we'll need to prevent anyone from coming into contact with Naruko's chakra unintentionally, Kakashi noted aloud. Otherwise, rare abilities might begin appearing unexpectedly. That would attract attention we can't afford right now. We should also be relieved that Sakura didn't come into contact with anything more intense, Sarutobi added, concern lining his features. Such as? If she had encountered Naruko's chakra while it was influenced by the Nine Tails energy, the Hokage explained, it could have been extremely overwhelming. That energy is not something easily handled, and its interaction with others could cause unexpected consequences. Kakashi leaned back in his chair, quietly absorbing the implications. The Nine Tails chakra was known to be highly potent, and any accidental transfer through Naruko could pose a serious risk. Fortunately, it seemed that this unique energy had a natural safeguard, resisting unwanted sharing. So, how should we proceed? Asked Kakashi. Sarutobi resumed, gently stroking his beard. For now, we remain silent. Discretion is vital at this moment, and as long as this remains undiscovered, we'll be fine. You are to ensure that this limit remains confidential. Kakashi nodded, acknowledging the directive. Right now, it was best to avoid stirring unnecessary attention. It's getting late, the Hokage continued. You've just returned from a mission and haven't had a proper rest. Tomorrow, bring Naruko to my office. We'll speak with her, but we'll keep the details about the Kyukagen private for now. With a final nod, Kakashi stood and made his way out, heading home for some well-earned rest before rejoining his team in the morning. Dear YouTube family, that's all for now. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for being a part of this journey. With appreciation. 6 Path Weeb.